Hello, and welcome to another episode of the 91 Podcast, the show where we dig deep into people's passions with the hope to inspire, educate, and encourage you. On today's episode, we have a lady who's been described as a transformation specialist. She's a psychotherapist, she's a counselor, and she's a teacher. And she's also a pastor. She wears many hats. This lady is none other than Dr. Zion Ekundare. Welcome, Dr. Zion. It's really lovely to have you here in the studio.
Hello. I'm really glad to be here.
When I was reading up on you, I discovered that you were trained as a medical doctor, but then in 2004, you suddenly decided to retire as a medical doctor and then switch to counseling. Why is that? Because the two don't really, fit together.
Yeah, well, as I say, I didn't really retire. It wasn't a career choice as such. It was a life choice, I ended up having to make a choice because of life between being a mom and being a doctor. I married somebody that we had some kind of genetic incompatibility. And so, we lost the first child, we had the second child, and she needed a bit of specialist care in the early days until she kind of grew into her immune system and was healthy and well. I couldn't do both. I just couldn't do both. So I had to give up the medicine and, devote a few years to making sure she was fine. Thank God she's very, very okay. You'd never even dream that she had any challenges as a child, as a baby. And now she's, and then after all that, so much time had gone past that it was a bit awkward to go back into medicine. And, there was always the threat of, you might get called into school, you might get called in. So somehow through a long circuitous route, I decided to take up something that was also to do with caring, counseling. And then I decided that I really loved it. So I thought, okay, I'll just do it properly.
It seems like you made a big sacrifice for your child. And that's something that really speaks to me right now. As someone who's just had another baby, my mind is telling me, do I keep chasing my passions? Or, do I give some time to my children? I think there's that fear there, especially with women. If you suddenly let go of your passion, let go of your dreams to take care of your children, are you going to be able to get back into it? Would you ever be able to, achieve the things you wanted to achieve? So did you ever think of that? Did that ever cross your mind? And how did you deal with it?
Of course, I'll tell you, it absolutely did. And for many years, even when I was around my colleagues, the medics, I used to feel kind of inadequate and think, oh my gosh, there's so much, and which is fine. You feel that way until one day, maybe something happens and then everybody looks towards the counselor, they look towards the pastor, and you realize that, there's value in what I'm doing. There's value in what I'm doing. And then again, I look at, the people that I've helped. I was speaking to a lady who had, somebody I'd worked with, and then she'd gone off for a few years, and then she came back for something small, and she was saying, I'm so sorry I disappeared. And I went, you have no idea how much joy it gives me when you disappear on me, because it means that somehow I've made a difference. I've helped you to make a difference in your life. You're okay. I said, so, that is very gratifying for me. So the truth is, yes, occasionally you look at it and you think, oh, I wish. And then you realize that actually, I'm actually very okay. I'm very content. I'm doing well. I'm okay.
So you're happy you made that choice and you've never thought differently about it? Or what if I did this? What if I...
Occasionally you do, especially when you see your friends with a lot of money, a lot more money, because obviously you make a lot more money in medicine than you make in counseling. But as I say, when you think about it, and I guess faith is also very powerful. There's a way God just makes everything okay. You get to a point where you think, I look up and I say, all I've needed, God has provided. And when you realize that that is so real, those things don't matter anymore. Those things don't intimidate me or bother me anymore. And that's God's truth.
At the end of the day, I feel fulfillment is more important than money. Yes, you would have made money, as a doctor, but I'm sure this makes you feel more fulfilled. You describe yourself as a transformational specialist. What does that mean?
It means that I come alongside people to the best of my ability to help them to bring change into their lives. We'll be amazed at the number of people who want a different outcome and keep doing the same thing. They're locked down in everything around them and they just keep doing the same thing and kind of imagine that something will be different. And so just the ability to be able to come alongside them and be able to explain to them that, just a little, a little modification, sometimes even a very big change can get you where you want to be. Because as you said, at the end of the day, this life is just one.
Yes.
So what gives you fulfillment in life? Let's focus on what fulfills you. And every other thing will fit in. If you're fulfilled and you're not rich, you'll be fine. If you're fulfilled, or if you're rich and you're unhealthy, what does that do to you? If you're rich and you're miserable, what use is that?
And I think at the end of the day, when, we're all at that moment where we're going to, go to glory, go to God, the last thoughts you have are, about that thing that fulfilled you and about your family. You wouldn't be thinking about, I would have made so much money doing this or doing that job or chasing this job, chasing that job. Mm-hmm. You only be thinking about fulfillment, because what's the purpose of living if you're not, being fulfilled?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I work with people who have so much money. They're the most miserable people on the earth.
Miserable with money.
Well, it sounds strange, but as they say, the more money you have, the more challenges you, and that is so true. That is so true. I remember there was a day where I had two clients. One I would refer to as maybe a millionaire, and one earning, hundreds. Mm. And when they both left, I sat down, I was reflecting, and I thought, God, life is so interesting. Big man, big problems. And the young man who thinks, his problems are crippling, his problems are actually negligible compared to the other fellow. But obviously, I can't tell each about the other, but I am sitting there thinking, wow, if I had to choose between these two people, I'd probably go for the younger man, a simpler life, smaller no stress, smaller problems, hope, not fear and panic and, that the other person was experiencing. But that's the reality of life. Mm. We never know what's going on with somebody else. We just
normally when people say that, I feel they're just, saying things to encourage you or making things up when they say, rich people have bigger problems and all of that. But the fact that you're saying that you've actually experienced that in your line of work, it makes me look at things a bit differently. I guess even though, the Bible does say money answers all things, but then again, money might not satisfy you. Might not satisfy all things. But what are the biggest problems you see that people from our background face?
I'm going to preface that with something. Maybe I should say the younger people now tend to be more in tune with their emotions. Mm. People my generation don't necessarily view problems from the emotional perspective. They view problems from the practical perspective. If a person, say, for example, who, I don't know, maybe they've fallen out of love with their husband, will give you reasons why they've fallen out of love. They won't actually be able to articulate the emotional issue that's going on. And so older kind of Afro-Caribbeans tend to have problems that they want a solution to. The younger ones tend to have more emotional problems. So that's why it's possible, but it's not as common to find, say, a 60-year-old who is saying that they're anxious or they're depressed. They will focus on the problem. It's almost like they find the cause and they focus on fixing the problem rather than dealing with the emotion. Whereas a 20-year-old will tell you, I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I can't sleep. And yes, they fit into that World Health demography, that anxiety and depression are really the biggest problems.
But would you say would you say it's better to know the problem? You said the older generation, they say, okay, this is my problem. I want to fix this. The younger generation are thinking, okay, I'm anxious, I'm depressed. Because then if you say you're anxious, you have to find out, why am I anxious? Or why am I depressed? And that might still lead you back to the problem itself. So what would you say is better, to know your problem like the older generation, or to, know that, okay, I'm anxious, I'm depressed?
It's probably easier, quite frankly, to know that you're anxious or depressed rather than know the problem. Because sometimes the problem that what we're attributing the issue to is not really the problem. It's just what is accessible to me at this point in time. I'm looking for a reason. I'm trying to find a reason why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. So I'm going to think, is it A, B, or C? And I'm going to go for A or B. Whereas it could be F. But if you come from the perspective of, right, I'm anxious, then whether you find the reason or not, at least we know what we're dealing with. We try and find a cause for it. We try and find something that's feeding it. And even if we never do, it's easier to come to peace. Not that you've locked your mind onto a problem that is possibly not accurate.
Not the real problem.
Yeah.
So that leads me to my next question. How do you know when you're anxious or depressed? What are the signs? How do I identify that, I'm dealing with anxiety or depression?
I mean, anxiety is always, as usual, is a typical, I'm worried. I find that I'm worried. There's day-to-day worry. I worry about whether it's going to rain. Should I take an umbrella? What dress should I wear? Am I dressed warmly enough? That's regular worry. But the kind of worry that wakes you up at night, that wakes you up at 4 a.m., that's the classic time. You wake up at 4 a.m. and your mind is just racing and you're worried about what, when that is a pattern, it's going on, then obviously you know that there's something wrong. When a person is having palpitations for no reason, when a person is having panic attacks, there's so many people who have had palpitations, they go and see their cardiologist, they test them and say there's nothing wrong. But they find that their heart is racing for no reason. They find that they're breaking out in sweat for no reason. They find that, they get in meetings and they're almost like paralyzed. They can't talk, Then a person it begins to become clear that, there is a challenge. There is a problem going on that needs to be addressed. As for depression, it's the same thing. There is feeling depressed and depression. Feeling depressed, usually something's happened that's causing a low mood. But when it's extending beyond 2 weeks, there is no pleasure in things that used to give us pleasure. There is, a person isn't sleeping enough or sleeping too much, is not eating enough or is eating too much. There is a criteria for diagnosing depression. And when you see these things, when they extend for more than 2 to 3 weeks, then you start thinking, right, this person needs help, because feeling a bit down, feeling a bit low is very different from struggling to get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah.
They're completely different things. Yeah.
So how do we, so if a person is dealing with anxiety or depression, what can you do to handle it? What can you do to manage it?
Well, there is always the medical alternative. A lot of people don't like the option of taking medication. But sometimes it's so far gone that they just need a little push. And that's really what it is. Tablets just give them a gentle push over into an area where they can now begin to utilize their own inner resources and start countering it and start pushing back and saying, right, I can fight this. But, when a person is too far gone, they don't even have the ability to access their inner strength. So, yes, there's medication, but then even most psychiatrists will say, in addition to the medication, you need to have a talking therapy. And yes, it feels like it's talking, but, when you look at the different levels of the mind, you find that even in talking, you're doing a lot. You're doing a lot. Number one, you're talking, you're relieving some kind of stress and pressure. Number two, a lot of us are not aware that the biggest part of our mind is the non-conscious part of our mind. It's not a part of our mind that we can access readily. A lot of things that happen to us, in the course of the day, when we go to sleep at night, it all gets filed away, classified and filed away nicely, and gets tucked into the non-conscious part of our minds. A lot of what is in the non-conscious part of our minds, we can't just decide to access it, But when things happen, it pops up. So you'd find that a person who maybe was robbed in front of a rose bush and was smelling roses will find that every time she smells roses, she feels uncomfortable because there's a memory somewhere in there that's being triggered. Now, when we talk and we do things like that, we begin to worry some of our non-conscious memories, and then they come up and they express themselves. And just talking and being able to reframe it, looking at it from a different perspective, something that seemed so horrible, something that just didn't make sense, suddenly starts taking on some kind of sense, and then it can be filed away properly. You can imagine if it's a bit difficult because now everything is filed into computers, but imagine if you put something in the wrong folder, even on your computer. You can't... Finding it, it's not useful for you anymore. But if you can somehow find a way of filing it away properly, when you need it, you can, the pathway to accessing it for it to be useful for you is better. And so that's where the talking therapy comes in, that, it's not just talking, it's skillful talking, it's guided talking to try and help you to get what you want.
So with talking, like a lot of people, when they have issues, like people in church, they go to their pastor for advice, they go to their pastor for counseling. So, are pastors counselors? What's your take on that? Because for me, I feel there's an issue there when it comes to confidentiality. You might tell a pastor, oh, this is happening, that's happening. For example, maybe in my marriage. And then on Sunday, you might hear it on the pulpit. Oh, this woman who's doing this to her husband, and then everyone finds out your business. So what's your take on that? Should we be going to our pastors, for counseling? What do you think?
Okay, I think first of all, to preface that with not every I think we moved away a bit from there now. Pastors, I like to believe, are a bit more aware of the fact that they need to be careful with information that's given to them. Obviously, they're not bound by the same kind of confidentiality rules as counselors are, but pastors have a role to play. Pastors, you see, a lot of people still see pastors as, a direct line to God. Mm-hmm. So when you need comfort, you need reassurance, you need a word from God, or you need something from God. You may not trust your own ability to talk to God, or you may not appreciate your own ability to reach God. So it's nice, it's great to have pastors who can do that. And obviously for a lot of challenges, a lot of issues, the input of your pastor, even if you just think about it like a child, you have a challenge, you go to your mom or you go to your dad, and your dad says, don't worry, everything is going to be all right. The problem may not be solved, but the fact that daddy has said everything is good. I mean, I certainly, my dad was like, my dad says everything is going to be all right. Let's just pray about it. I know the kind of how much relief and peace I get just from hearing that. So yes, pastors have a huge, very crucial, very important role to play. I think pastors are being trained now to appreciate the nuances of confidentiality, the nuances of when something is beyond, when there's a real problem, you should appreciate the fact that maybe people can get, I don't want to say better help, but they can be better helped.
More professional.
If I send them off to somewhere where they can actually be better helped. So, yes, I think there is a place for pastors. Pastors who train to be counselors are, I think, in a very good position, because people don't believe it, but there are many psychiatrists who actually train to be counselors. So that it's not just a question of, I'm just writing medication, I'm just prescribing and writing medication. They're actually saying, right, I want to treat you holistically. I want to help you. So, yeah, I think we can work together.
So when do you think, how do you know, how can someone identify when the issue they're dealing with, they need much more help than just the help they can get from a pastor?
I think every pastor should be able to recognize, there are issues that people bring to you, and you realize that these are deep-seated issues. So a person is coming to you and they're telling you something on the surface, and you talk to them and you realize that I can't just slap a scripture on this and everything will be fine. You also realize that this person isn't really being helped. I hear it a lot. I hear it when people come and they say, look, fine, I've come to you, but don't talk to me about scripture. I know what the scripture says. I can probably quote what you're going to quote at me better than you can, but I need you to give me something that I can work with. I need tools that I can practically use. It's like that scripture in the Bible that says someone comes to you and tells you they're hungry and you say, bless you. How does that help the person? The person needs money to eat or needs food. So I think a responsible pastor will recognize that this issue, I can't even conclude it in the 1 hour that I'm having with this person. I think this person needs to be, even just the basic, this person needs to be followed up. Maybe this person needs some specialist help. Maybe they have, because when we talk about even going to pastors, people go to pastors and talk about money. They talk about issues they have with money. They talk about, issues that require a solicitor. And a pastor would think nothing of saying, you need to go and speak to a financial advisor. You need to go to your bank. You need to speak to your insurance agent. You need to find a solicitor. So why is it difficult why should it be difficult? You would send them to a doctor, wouldn't you? So in the same way, when you realize that this person, I'm talking to the person, I've encouraged them, I've prayed for them, but this thing is deeper.
Yeah, it's not, I can't solve this problem. I need professional help.
Yes. You know, it's not a. I think just being open to the fact that this service is available. I think the pastors that are aware, use the service without any problems.
I think sometimes responsibility might also come on the individual themselves. They might need to realize, oh, I need more help than I'm getting here. Let me go to someone that's a professional. Because sometimes some pastors, because of pride, wouldn't want to tell you to go somewhere else. They want to give you that feeling that, oh, I can help you, I can solve everything. And they really can't. So, you need to go to someone professional. So I think that brings me to my next question. So apart from pastors, how can family and friends help a person who's dealing with issues like anxiety or depression? What are the steps that we can take? So if I know someone who's going through that, what can I do to help, apart from sending them to a professional?
I think it's, as with everything, is just being there for them, letting them know that you care. A lot of us go to people and we see somebody and we say, hi, how are you? And we're not really interested in listening to their answer. They go, I'm fine. And that's fine for most of us. We don't want to go beyond that. And sometimes when they tell us a little bit more than that, we're almost like, calm down.
I don't want to hear it. That's too much drama.
Exactly, TMI.
Keep your drama to yourself.
Yes. But if we're mindful of that, especially with the people that are, important to us, to listen. When we ask that, how are you? And they go, fine, thank you. To be able to say, no, how are you? Tell me. I want to know. I want to be able to help you. Sometimes you might not even be able to lift a finger, but just because you're there, just because you're, yesterday I was in an office and, as I walked past, somebody called me and said, oh, please, I need you to talk to this young gentleman. And I was like, oh, hello. And, the lady was like, I was going to send him to you or to see if I could make an appointment to get both of you together. And what had happened, she had been asking about something to do with work, something totally unrelated. And then she said, I just looked into her eyes and I just saw a heaviness. And I asked her, what's going on with you? And she was like, oh, no. He was like, no, I'm fine. I said, no. Are you sure you're okay? And by the time he started talking, she said she felt overwhelmed. Immediately, she was like, whoa. But the point I'm making is, by just asking 2 extra questions, just going 2 layers deeper, she uncovered something quite big, And yes, I believe by God's grace, we were able to kind of at least signpost him to where he could get, a bit of assistance. But the truth is, if she had looked into his eyes as she was asking him, they were talking about work, and she had seen what she thought was a shadow, had seen maybe a glimmer of tears and thought, I don't have time for that today. Let me just, she would have just walked away. So it's just little things, just looking at people. And I think for parents, we have to be very careful. Parents especially, because of everything that's going on out in the world. We have to pay special attention to our children. We have to make sure that we're always talking to them. We have to make sure that, how was school? Fine. That's not enough. That's not enough. We have to, and I know people of color have that thing of, my child is not my friend. My child is, I'm the parent. No, yeah. We've gone beyond all of that now. Your children have to be your friends. Your children have to know that you are their first point of somehow we have to have a relationship where I am the author. I am the person they come to for help. I am the person they come to for solutions. Because that way I can really help them. That way I can really know what's going on in their lives. And that way I can pick up when things are going on very early. Because a lot of us, we just do the mom thing. I feed you, I clothe you,
no relationship.
I make sure you do your homework. And So by the time I find out something is going on, it's spilled into real pathology. But if we're friends, if I know and I have a good relationship, say with my son, and we're talking and, I have a good relationship with him, the moment he starts getting withdrawn, I know something isn't right, So that's it. It's just paying that attention.
So apart from what you mentioned earlier, anxiety and depression, are there any other issues that people from our background are more prone to?
Confidence. Yeah, a lot of us are not confident. We're intimidated by the world, Whether we like it or not, racism is real. Overt, covert, implied, subliminal, it's there all around us.
So confidence is actually an issue.
Big thing, very big thing.
Why is that?
Because people go to work, and whether we like it or not, people will look down on you. People will cut you down, because you're black. People will express surprise. If you say something or you do something remarkable, you will almost see it in their body language, like, wow, I didn't expect that. Sometimes even, I remember hearing, talking to somebody who would go into meetings, and there was a person in the meeting. Just for the record, this child was born here, grew up here, so it's not like they had a nice, fresh African accent. They talked like the average white person. And every time they spoke up in the middle of a big meeting, there would be somebody who would say, sorry, I don't understand what you're saying. Sorry. And by the time this happened 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times,
I would break up.
What happened was this person would never speak up. Now, there's certain kinds of jobs where you honestly cannot progress if you don't speak up. And it took quite a while until this person realized, I think somebody actually pointed it out and helped this person to realize that, something's going on here. And if you don't deal with it, you might as well just, resign. Because if you don't deal with it, you have to deal with it. You have to deal with it. You have to push back. If someone says, oh, I don't understand, you have to learn to do things like, can everybody else understand? And everybody goes, yeah, we hear you. And you're like, need to get your ears tested or something. Make it a joke, and just deal with it. Because if you don't deal with it, it won't go away. But very few people have the natural confidence. Again, people of color, children are seen and not heard. We don't have a voice in our homes. So if I'm shut down in public, it's not too far from...
Because you're already shut down at home.
Yes.
Your parents are already shutting you down. It's funny you say confidence. When you said that, I was like, why did you see something in me? Because I know, growing up, I know sometimes I had issues with my confidence. At a point when I was doing my A-levels, I was studying business, studying economics. And even though I knew so much, I felt like I didn't. I just felt like what I knew wasn't good enough. It wasn't enough to try and do these subjects. And sometimes my teacher would tell me, be confident in your ability. Be confident in your ability. And then I realized, I started feeling a bit more knowledgeable, feeling like I could do more. And I was even helping people in my class, teaching them, because they were able to build that confidence in me. But yet, confidence is something a lot of us deal with. Sometimes I know when I walk around, I feel like maybe people are looking at me, someone's judging me, they're looking at me like, okay, maybe this person is looking fat, or they're looking ugly, or, there's something funny about them, maybe this person's laughing at me. And I think it is something that is in there. Yeah. But what can we do to build our confidence? And first of all, how do we notice you have a confidence issue?
I think, again, parents will pick it up from their children. And I think one of the biggest things a parent can do for their child is encourage them to be confident. Don't shut them down. This whole thing of they make a mistake. A mistake is not the end of the world. It's just a mistake. We correct it and we move. And you let them, grow them to understand that mistakes are part of life.
Even adults make mistakes.
Even adults make mistakes. Make a mistake, learn from it, move on. Don't dwell on it. But because, of, again, a lot of our cultural issues, mistakes are a huge thing. So, we've already... You can see how the layers are already been stacked up in a child's soul. Then they go out into the world, and then they're different. They're the only one in the room. They're different. Everybody, they feel different. They're already coming. Not again, when you don't speak up, you don't even realize how good you are. But the day you speak up, and everybody goes, "Wow!" Suddenly you get a boost in you. So it's sometimes we have to go down deep and start trying to get people to unearth what exactly are we not confident about. So a woman will tell you, my complexion, my hair, my beauty. So my job is to teach you that that beauty that you're looking at, it is ephemeral. It's so transient. Why don't you focus on the real things? The real you. The real you is not what you look like. The real you is the person inside you. So why don't we let's look at the person inside you. That person. Talk to me about that person. Then we start looking for the positive things in that person, the positive things. And also helping people to realize that, there's some things that the world applauds. So if you're a CEO, if you're a high performer, everybody behaves as though high performers are fantastic. If you're not high performing, it's not true. The high performer cannot perform without the support. You can be the best support you can be. I remember, talking to somebody once. I remember reading a book once, And this person, they were talking about their church in America. It was a huge, very flourishing church. And everything was going very, very well with the church. And then suddenly everything just went crazy. All kinds of problems, all kinds of troubles hit them. They were so beset with problems. Everywhere they looked, they had problems, that they took a week of prayer and fasting, severe, intense prayer and fasting, because they were like, something has definitely gone wrong. And guess what? The message they kept getting, that the janitor died. And they were like, the janitor died. What's that got to do with
the big
money problems, leaks, families breaking up? What's that got to do? So they asked around, and they found that they had this janitor who really had died. He was a little old man who lived in the basement of the church. He had no family. He just lived there. He looked after the building and opened the doors and everything. Then people started coming forward that they would come to church and he would slip them a note. And on that note would be the solution to the problem they had that they had never said to anybody. For some people, it was a word of encouragement. For some people, it was a word from the Lord. He didn't actually sit anybody down and had a conversation. He just used to pass out these notes. Because he was the janitor, he moved around the building. He got to hear a lot of things. Apparently, this guy was the intercessor for the ministry. They didn't realize that they had somebody who just lived in their basement, and all he did was pray. So when their prayer cover, lapsed, the problem started kicking in. So where am I going with this? I'm saying that it's not the pastor. The pastor is not he wasn't the one keeping the church going. It was one person that nobody paid attention to. But later on, probably 2 years after he died, people now were coming forward and giving testimonies of how this man had seriously impacted their lives. Everything suddenly started making sense. So wherever we are, we have a role to play. It's not about being and it's helping people to realize that if you're a D student, that D student doesn't mean that you're useless. Yeah. There is something within you that is unique to only you, that only you can bring to the world. Let's try and find what it is and just flourish in that, and I think those are the answers to confidence, helping people to find that their unique sweet spot. And even if they don't actually fully find it, just to have that awareness that you're not an accident. You're not, you're here by design, So somewhere along the line, you will fit into where you're meant to be and everything's going to be okay. That fulfillment, you will find it.
So I know when you were mentioned that you were talking about, parents and their children, parents helping build their confidence. But what if, you're an adult, you're in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, and for years you've had your confidence broken? How are you suddenly going to mend something like that? I'll give you an example. It sounds a bit silly, but I remember when I was in primary school, this girl came to me, and then she was like my friend's younger sister. I think I was in primary 5, so maybe she was in primary 3 or something. And then she looks at me, and I'm wondering, why are you looking at me? And then she says, you have big breasts. And I was like, what? And then she says, my mom says only mad women have big breasts. So even though that happened when I was in primary 5,
Now I'm 31 years old and I'm still not confident when it comes to my
hunching over and wearing loose
Yeah, because I'm
things.
thinking, how do I hide? So I'm still not confident now, about that. And that's something that happened when I was primary 5. So how is someone supposed to build confidence that they've lost in a certain area over all those years? How's that possible?
It's possible if they can recognize what it is, think about it. Sometimes there's some things we can find a scripture for, So I have big breasts. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm not an accident. I'm not they're very carnal ways of dealing, of getting confident about that. But, let's keep it clean, I'm fearfully and I am perfectly made for every good work. God didn't make a mistake. Sometimes, the behavioral scientists will tell you a lot that, write an affirmation. Feed it into your soul. I'm okay. So what if I have big breasts, little breasts, long, short? It's fine. It's okay. It's okay. Look, with these so-called imperfections, I'm happily married. And they're beautiful models who cannot even find a man to, depending on what you want from life. Some people don't want to be married. Some people want to be married. What I want, I have. If I want to be married with children and I'm married with children, my goal for myself, my life is working out. What you think about it, due respect, doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. But I have to teach myself that. I have to tell myself that there are many kind of courses, many kinds of, places where people can go to learn. There are books people can pick up, people can work one-on-one with the coach or the therapist who will help them to find the things that are good about you. Find them, celebrate them. Even the things that are not so good about you. If you say, for example, let's just go back to the big breasts. Did you make the big breasts? Did you choose it? No, you didn't. You didn't choose it.
The funny thing is, every time when I look, even today, I was looking in the mirror and then I remember this girl from I remember that comment and I was like, huh?
And shall I tell you what I find what gives a lot of people the aha moment? When I tell them, if you could find that girl, that little girl, and if you could remind her, do you realize that you said this to me? She'll probably look at you and think, I did?
Oh, who are you?
They have no memory. People say these things, they have no memory. So they go on and they live their best life. They've dropped this little seed that has caused the problem. And I'm like, uproot it, pull it out. First of all, the person, even if they remember, they don't really care about you. They've just said what they've said. And but the truth is that 90% of the time, they don't even remember. They have no memory of having done that. So you're doing yourself such a disservice by allowing that thing to affect you. Because someone's just running their mouth. They just said what popped into their head or whatever was going on between them and their mother. I don't even want to unpack what could possibly be going on, why a mother would make a statement like that. But there's a story behind it. There is definitely a story behind it.
That has nothing to do with you.
Nothing to do with you. So why is it my own problem?
Do you mind giving us maybe 3 steps or just a few steps on, how to deal with your confidence? A few steps that maybe anyone watching could, just use out there. Anyone else who might be dealing with these deep-rooted issues that are still in them. So do you have a few steps you could give us?
I would say pray about it. Pray and ask the Lord, show me what may have. Because you remember. A lot of people don't remember. Show me what it could have been. Then, second step, if I can access what it is that affected my confidence, write it down. Write them all down. Write, maybe they're abusive words. Maybe they're words that, put downs. Write them down. Then stand back from them, and examine them in the light of reality of who I am, You'll never amount to anything. That's a common one, you're just useless. Hey. Then look at this human being that God has created and ask yourself, are you useless?
No.
Ask yourself, if you don't believe it, look for people who genuinely love you. Am I useless? They will tell you the truth. Go to the Word of God. Am I useless? Write out what God says about you and then begin to feed your spirit with that. Begin to feed your spirit. Begin to make, affirmations are very powerful. I have been told all my life that I am useless, but I realize that I am the apple of God's eye. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. God loves me with an everlasting love. It sounds like just words, but I promise you, stick it on your bathroom mirror and read it. It's only a matter of time. Your default will switch to I am useless to I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I am perfect for every good work. You will begin to think that. Now, that's not to make you arrogant. It's just, you're just coming from -20, you're coming up to
building your
+5.
confidence.
Yes. And then suddenly it starts affecting the way you walk. It starts affecting the way you behave yourself. It starts affecting the way you speak up. It affects your demeanor. It affects your stature. You don't realize it. Your whole body language changes. People who used to dismiss you suddenly start thinking, there's something different about this person. Back to this, my transformational thing. You teach people that you can transform your life. With a little bit of help, you can create great transformation. You may not see it, but I promise you, everybody else around you is seeing it. You just notice that people start treating you differently, So, yeah, I think I've given 3 steps, haven't I?
Wow. Yes, just the whole conversation we've just had about confidence, like, it's very powerful because sometimes there's so many things that are affecting your life, you don't even know, where it came from. But so many things are just breaking your confidence. Like with me now, I'm afraid of maths. And I remember exactly when that started. When I was in school, we were coming down the staircase, and we could see all our exam papers on the table. And mine said, and it looked like it said 90%. But when I came downstairs and then they gave it to me the right way, they turned it over. It said 0.6%. I got 0.6% in that exam, but ever since then, because everyone was laughing, ever since then, I've hated maths. When I see maths, it starts giving me a headache. And that's something that, destroyed my confidence in maths. Maybe if I was able to fix my confidence, I would have, felt better doing maths, felt better when I started doing economics in A-levels because I knew I was confident enough to tackle the maths. But yeah, confidence is something that affects many people, and you never know, what in your life it could be tearing down just because you don't have confidence. There's a question I really wanted to ask an expert in your field. So there's so much information out there about, truths, untruths, and just so much information everywhere. And it ends up bringing up different conspiracy theories that many of us get into. So I wanted to just find out, what's the thin line, between conspiracy theories and mental illness? Because then you do get a lot of people who get so deep into these conspiracy theories, watching them every day, just consuming this information every day to the point where they come up with things that might sound ridiculous. Like I've heard someone seriously tell me, the royal family are lizards, they drink baby blood, 5G is the cause of COVID-19. Someone opened up a 5G tower and there was COVID-19 inside it. So you hear these type of things every day a lot because of all the information that's out there. So how do you know when this has gone past conspiracy theory and is now mental illness?
You will know because, we all peddle, or so many people peddle all these theories. Peddling the theory is obviously, it gratifies something in us. That's why we repeat these things. But the vast majority of people who peddle these theories is just shooting the breeze, just gist. It's just chit chat, something to say. We all hate the government. We all hate the billionaires. Of course, it's Bill Gates trying to wipe out half the people in the world. We all have all these things that fit into something. And it's not right, probably. For some people it's right, because at the end of the day, freedom of speech is not a crime. You can say whatever you want. But then you will find some people that it affects their day-to-day living. It affects their lives. So you find somebody who will refuse to venture out. We're sliding into something that's a bit out of the norm. You find people who line their houses with tin foil because they're trying to, bat away the radiation. They've now moved into delusions, It's the things that they do that will make you realize that, this person is slipping, off to the wrong side of the scale. But at the end of the day, if someone chooses to line their house with tin foil, but they go out, they go to work, they pay their bills, they sustain themselves. You know what? That's their own private little, it's their thing. You can't stop it. It's when they do all those things, but they cannot function, that's when people now feel, right, this is a problem. We need to step in and help the person. So at the end of the day, it's people make choices, but then can you function with the choices? As long as you can function, it's okay. It's when they can't function, that's when it becomes a problem.
So just one last, sorry. You mentioned that it gratifies something in us. So spreading all these things gratifies something in us. What does it gratify?
I don't know. It means different things to different people. Why does somebody sit down and just cobble up something and spread it out there? It's gratifying something, whatever it is. Maybe a need to feel important. Maybe it's just a thing of, I don't really trust. I don't trust the government. Maybe it's just, I hate billionaires. Maybe it's even an envy of billionaires. But there's always something. There's something there that is being gratified that makes you repeat something that, quite frankly, to ordinarily doesn't make sense. But you've chosen to believe it. You've made a choice that this must be real. These days they tell us a lot of the time that when you read anything on social media, they tell you to do a fact check. Check it. Is this factual? Is it real? Because people bring reels from 20 years ago and cobble, make up something. They tell you, do a search, a reverse search, and find out if it's real. Now, if you're a responsible person, that's what you'll do. But you may choose not to do it. If you choose not to do it, it means that story is important enough.
Yeah.
Whatever it is feeding something in you that's making you feel,
gratifying.
hence the word gratification.
So just before we round up, I just want to ask you 3 random questions.
That's fine.
The first one is, what do you love the most? The second one is, what do you dislike the most? And the third one is, what do you think more people should know about?
What do I love the most? I'm going to say this and you're probably going to think, yeah. I love God. I love God. And it's very simple. I think God has put himself out so much for us, that, the only response I have, and I'm sorry, I know this sounds really, really like I'm being religious, but, maybe sometimes I preface it again with, I guess some of the things in the past, some of the things I thought were most important to me in this world. I wanted this, I wanted this. I don't have them. I haven't been able to have them. And I've come to realize that maybe they weren't God's perfect plan for me, or maybe it is just what it is. I haven't had them. But then I've had, I always wanted to be married. I always wanted to have 4 children. I had this was my plan. People will say, oh, yes, you wanted to be a doctor. I was like, yeah, I want to be a doctor. But I wanted to be married with 4 children. And, that was, for me, those were the most important things to me in my life. But then, fast forward many, many years, things didn't quite work out like that. But is life okay? Yes. Am I happy? Yes. Am I contented? Yes. Am I fulfilled? Yes. So I've come to realize that it's God that has made me realize that, it's God that, I wish I could tell you the things God does for me. Sometimes I blush, He just singles me out and it's almost like, you know what? Enjoy this, So because of that, I when I say it, as God is my witness, I really mean it, because the things that I would have hooked my joy onto, maybe they're there or they're just there on the periphery, but he's always shown up for me. So that's what I love most.
And just to put something in there before you go to the second question, even with the whole situation of, not being a medical doctor anymore and moving into counseling, those were situations and circumstances God still used to bring you to fulfillment. Yeah. So even though to you, these are things that you wanted, at the end of the day, you didn't need them because, they weren't important for that fulfillment.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I look at it and I think I could have had some of these things and I could have been such a miserable human being. Or I could have just been on one path that is, nowhere near where I want to be. So I can see the goodness of God in that. Yeah. What do I hate most in this world? I hate injustice. I hate it with a passion, It's something that gets me passionate. It gets me frustrated. It gets me, sometimes when I talk to my medical friends, I'm always challenging people. I'll say, why is it Bill Gates that is finding a cure for a malaria vaccine? Why is it that we have this kind of poverty? Why is it that why don't people do the right thing? Why do we oppress and suppress and frustrate one another? Why don't we care about the things that we should care about? Why do you care about irrelevant things? Why do we cheat people? Why do we put each other down? I'm very aware that I am what I am by the grace of God. I was brought up the way I was brought up by the grace of God. It doesn't mean that I'm better than somebody. I'm no better than that child in the famine in Somalia or in the war zone in Somalia. So I have to always remember that I'm no better. It's just circumstance, chance, purpose, I don't know, whatever, destiny that has put me here. So why can't I do everything I can to help that child rather than sort of say, well, I'm in London, I'm fine, I have a nice car, I have a nice house, I have electricity 24/7, so I don't care. Why? Yeah. So that's the surface level, but the deeper, injustices that are beyond my power, I'm like, at least I can pray. If I can't do anything, I can pray. Yeah. So that's I think what I hate most. Now, what I think everybody should know. I think everybody should know that they're capable of much better. Never accept the lies the enemy has told you. Never accept what a human being says about you, regardless of who that human being is. Never accept it. Go and find out what God says about you. Because, if you find out what God says about you, nothing else will matter. We won't be moved by, you see, for me, this world, this life that we live in, for me, is the equivalent of going on holiday. So I go to Paris for a week, for example. I even go to Seychelles, I don't know, wherever, Bahamas for a week. It's not real. Whatever happens there, even if I stay in a 7-star hotel, I'm still coming back to my 2-bedroom flat. That's the reality of my life, at least in this realm. So I need to look at this life that we live into, that this is not the reality. This is the holiday. So whatever happens in this holiday it's not the beginning and be all and end all of life. It's just what's happening on the holiday. So obviously, the same way as I wouldn't go to Paris and go and steal and end up in prison. It's the same way, I guess, here I would try not to do the things that will put me in trouble when I really get back home.
Yeah.
And I wish everybody knew that, because I think it would affect the way we treat one another, the way we behave to one another, because you will realize that, as my mother used to say, if you wear 2 wristwatches, people think you're crazy. You can't sleep in 2 rooms at the same time. So just enjoy this life and, don't sweat them.
And when you know what God says about you, you will be confident. Even no matter what your parents say to you or a friend say to you or anyone says to you,
Hold
you
your
will
head
be
high.
confident.
You will be confident. And if you're confident, everything will work out for you.
So thank you so much for this conversation, Dr. Zion. Honestly, it's helped me. So I hope it'll help people out there. I know it'll help people out there. So if you want to know more about Dr. Zion, go to www.zionekundare.com. And you can also sign up, to have her have a one-on-one session with you if you're in need of some encouragement or some transformation in your life. And if you enjoyed this conversation, please remember to like, subscribe, and share. The more you share, the more we can help build the confidence of so many other people out there. Well, that was such a great conversation with Dr. Zion. On our next episode, we have Michael Adekoye. He dives deep into the matters with SMEs in Nigeria and also talks about how you can run a side hustle. Please, guys, don't forget to like and, of course, subscribe. We really, really need your support. Thank you, guys. See you next time.